Welcome to Begin, Build, Blossom, your business journey with Clarita, the podcast where we will discuss valuable insights, resources, and motivation to fuel your entrepreneurial spirit. Let's build a supportive community together. Subscribe now to Begin, Build, Blossom, and let's embark on your business journey. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Begin, Build, Blossom, your business journey. And today we have with us Kelly Gonsalves. She is Chief Visionary and Founder. Mix a creative mind with a number cruncher, then throw in a dash of New York City attitude, and what do you get? Kelly G, a true entrepreneur that is all in all the time. She has started 3 companies, including a co founding role in Ideation Think Forward. Kelly is a force to be reckoned with. Her first endeavor began in 2015 when Kelly founded Totally Booked. The purpose? To assist every small business in becoming more profitable by utilizing efficient accounting processes. Most people would sit back and coast on their success, but Kelly isn't most people. She's shown no signs of slowing down. In 2020, Kelly founded a new venture, Totally SEO. The major mission of Totally SEO is simple: to get accounting professionals and app partners more visibility from the audience they desire so they can focus on creating the strong business they deserve. Where else has this passion for small business solutions taken her? Kelly is a QuickBooks Advanced Certified ProAdvisor, a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network, a HubDoc Top 50 Cloud Accountant, an Avalara's Social Media Top 100, an Insightful Accountant Top 10 ProAdvisor, as well as the host of Insightful Accountants QB Talks App Neighborhood Watch. In her downtime, Kelly spends her weekends paddleboarding on the lake with her dog Nina, cooking up a great meal, or taking on a DIY project at her new home. And we have Nina with us, so help me welcome Kelly and Nina.
Yes, Nina can climb up on my desk, as you know, so she tends to invite herself to my meetings. So here she is. If she makes noise, I will kick her out, but for now, we're good.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that Kelly is an accountant that gives back quite a bit. Kelly and I actually met, let's see, we were talking about this earlier. Kelly Kelly was actually part of a training or webinar that I
Hmm.
had enrolled in. And I remember she mentioning that she was out of Queens and she had her own accounting practice. And I was so impressed by her, and I was actually getting ready to move to New York at that time. I reached out and I was just asking her, about networking events and so forth. And I somehow it ended up with us scheduling a meeting. And you were so gracious with your time. You were so happy to assist me. And since then, for those who listened to the very first episode, I talked about an accountant that has been helping me with QuickBooks and just sitting with me to just build my practice. And this is Kelly. I'm so grateful.
I'm so glad that I was able to help. So you and I were talking about this, but anytime I'm in a position to help somebody else out or lift somebody else up, I'm happy to. So I'm glad that you reached out, and I'm glad that you found our meetings beneficial, and I'm glad that it's been a while. I feel like at least a year now, right?
Yes, it's been a while. And we've actually met in person at a conference, but literally we,
Mm-hmm.
we, we just said hi quickly. We quickly said hi to each other. Other than that, we haven't met in person. And yet I feel like I know you so well because we literally meet every week. And whenever I have something I would like to work through, I would send you a message and you would get online and meet with me, sometimes for hours, to help me work through a situation I may have. I reach out to you for client work. I mean, if I have client work to do, even to have a meeting with one of my clients so we can walk through
Yeah.
processes. So you've been, honestly, I think you've been so
Well, I
encouraging.
feel like anyone starting out, first off, taking the first step of starting a business, or, kind of, it's a leap of faith, if you will. A lot of times, especially for a business like accounting, it's not a clear, business plan kind of thing, right? So it's, what do I know? What knowledge do I have? Kind of like, where am I starting? And then what do I need to learn? And then it's not always easy to figure out how to learn those things, right? Yes, you can do QuickBooks training and you'll learn parts of the software, but for some people that's not enough.
Hmm.
And so if I can point them towards resources, or, kind of help somebody find the thing that they need, or be the thing that they need, like, happy to.
Yeah, so publicly, Kelly, I tell you all the time, but I want to publicly say a huge thank you. I have come a long way because of you. So I really appreciate all your help.
Oh, thank you.
All right. You're most welcome. And Nina too. Thank you, Nina.
Yes.
We can't forget Nina. All right. So we are going to get started with a section we call rapid fire. We try to get quick responses, but if you need to expand on anything, please go ahead and do so. So if there's one word you would use to describe yourself now, and one word you would have used to describe yourself as a child. So we're looking for two words. One that describes you now and one that described you as a child.
I'm gonna go with how my mom described me, because I'm gonna use them in
Mm-hmm.
comparison. My mom used to always say I was high strung.
Mm.
So when I was little, big, mental health wasn't a big thing. So they were just like, oh, she's fine. She's nervous all the time. She's anxious, essentially. So I had anxiety as a kid. I would make myself literally sick to my stomach worrying about things. And I think now I've transitioned to more
Mhm.
optimistic. I like to be more, wherever I can, uplifting. Like I said, if I can help, if I can jump in, if there's a problem, I'm like, let's solve it, let's figure it out. And so I would say optimistic now, but definitely anxious when I was younger. Like, flip flop.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And I know we covered some of these in the introduction, but I will ask anyway, and it will be a way to get to know you even better. So, what is the name of your business, or should I say, the names of your businesses?
I'm like, Totally Booked is my main business. That's my accounting firm. As you mentioned, Totally SEO is I would call it a marketing, kind of beginner marketing for accountants. Leading Lady Machine Works is our Etsy shop that I share with my friend Kristen, who is also an accountant based in California. And we sell kind of like work from home accountant esque swag. And then Ideation Think Forward is actually, we sunset it, but it was going to be a not for profit for what we wanted to do, and we just didn't have the resources, was to get into schools to teach and show accounting students kind of what they were signing up for, right? So rather than having somebody enter the industry and be kind of completely blind, but they have this accounting degree, or they're, pursuing their CPA and they don't really know what they're going to be doing, we kind of wanted to match accounting students to firms and to let them get a head start on, stuff like how to use QuickBooks, how to use Zero, how to like apply what they learned in school in the real world. So I think we're still hopeful that we'll get it off the ground someday, but we didn't have the resources to make it work.
And I think that's such a great idea because I mean I've been an accountant my whole life. I studied to be an accountant and all of that. And when it came to actually using software like QuickBooks, I froze because like what am I supposed to do here?
It's very different, like, what you learn in school. So when I first started, I went back and took just a bookkeeping class to learn and understand kind of the back end of what, so, like, I learned QuickBooks, but I didn't know what it was doing necessarily, and I wanted to understand it at a more, like, basic level. And so learning T charts and just understanding journal entries and kind of how things work, I was like, "Oh, okay, so QuickBooks essentially does it for you." But that doesn't always mean it's straightforward, in that what you learned is gonna translate into that system very easily.
Right. So I really do hope that you can get the resources that you need to get that off the ground because I think that's a very good initiative. And maybe we can talk offline about I mean maybe financially I'm not able to do much right now, but who knows? I can provide some kind of support. So I would love to continue that conversation with you. And in terms of the number of years in business, how long have you been doing this work?
9 years. That's crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh, when I say it, yeah, 9 years. Totally Booked was started 9 years ago.
And what is different about what is different in terms of what you did prior to starting business and what you're doing now?
Okay, so I know everyone's like, "Oh, you start a business and then you make your own schedule and it's your time and it's your life and you're going to be in charge and it's going to be great." Not right away.
Mhm.
So, I think before I started a business, I was working for a company. I had a fairly set schedule and I would go in and it wasn't accounting related. I was doing project management for a startup and it was, to be fair, it was an awful job and I hated every minute of it, but it was fairly repetitive, right? So, it was pretty routine, nothing too crazy for the most part, Monday through Friday. And then I don't know if you even know this story. So I was fired from the job because it was mutual. We did not like each other. So it was kind of like, who's going to call it first? But I was like, I'm not quitting until I have another job lined up and I make my decision. So they let me go. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so excited. This guy was like, you're fired. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So he's like, I was like, do you need anything else from me? Do you need me to send you anything, sign anything? And he's like, no. He's like, I have your paycheck. And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, all right, so you have my number. If you need anything, feel free to call me. Take care and good luck. Like,
Wow.
have a good life. And he's like, all right. So I called my aunt, who has been I guess, an accountant. Yeah, she's been an accountant for about 40 years now. And so I was like, hey, I was like, and I had been complaining about this job because it was awful. And she's like, oh, great. I'm teaching a QuickBooks class next week. She was like, figure it out now that you have an open schedule and make sure that you're there. And so that next Tuesday, I showed up for class. And like I said, I learned backwards. I learned QuickBooks first, and then I took some accounting classes to kind of like relearn accounting. But yeah, so kind of changed my life. But I think the biggest difference is if I'm miserable now, if I'm unhappy now, if it's a client that I'm not liking, or if I'm not happy with the tool that I'm using, I can just make the decision to make that change.
Right.
Right. And I didn't feel that way in the beginning. In the beginning, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I'll take every client and it'll be amazing and I will just do everything they ask for and I'm not even going to worry about, money or billing or any of the things." Um I learned very quickly that I had to figure out my pricing and kind of be very clear on my scope and my engagement and what exactly I was going to be responsible for and what my actual role was going to be in these companies, because especially when you're going on site doing bookkeeping and accounting work, you kind of fall into that admin role very easily.
Mhm.
And so clients would kind of creep into like, oh, maybe you can open the mail, maybe you can go to the bank, maybe you could do these things. And I started to become more like an employee. And so I had to set boundaries. And so learning to set boundaries was pretty major because I didn't have to worry about it as much when I had a job. It was pretty straightforward. Here's your job, here's your role, this is what you're going to do. So I think the biggest difference, it's the freedom, but it's the freedom to do what's best for you. So I'm not going to say that you're going to start a business and I love when people post that they're like, oh, working from the beach, only 2 hours a day. And it's like, okay, no, that's not realistic for me. But I can say it's the freedom to make those decisions and do what's best for me, do what's best for essentially my time,
Mhm.
what's best for my mental health, that kind of stuff. That's what makes a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of highest high in business, what would you say that has been for you?
So, like, you have revenue highs when you're like, okay, I've hit X amount. This was my goal, or I surpassed my goal. Winning awards is really cool. Like, I didn't ever expect to win an award, right? So, like you mentioned, I won top 10 twice. Once was top up and comer, and the other was top social media,
Mm.
which was pretty cool. I think when Intuit asked me to join their trainer writer network, I thought that was, I still think that was a pretty high, because it's kind of like validation and recognition kind of thing.
Mhm.
What my business has allowed me to do, like buying a house was really big. I was able to move to California because I could work remotely. I think it's kind of a collection of little moments that you're like, I couldn't do this if I worked a 9 to 5. I couldn't do this if I worked for someone else. I couldn't do this if I didn't have that freedom or if I didn't have the ability to set my own rates and really get paid what I should be getting paid. So I don't know, I guess it's a collection of things. It's not as straightforward.
No, those are great. Wow. And congratulations. That's really amazing. Being able to buy a house, being recognized at such a level, and I mean into it. That's amazing. So congratulations on all of that. And what's on the flip side of that, when has been maybe one of the lowest moments for you?
I think every couple of years, I think in life and with that in business, we kind of go through seasons and we go through transitions, right? So when I decide that I want to change some processes or I want to take on different clients, sometimes that can affect things like revenue or schedule or, I would say probably those moments of transition can feel really low, but they in the end wind up paying off really well. So I don't know if I have a specific low moment, so to speak, but I think that when you start a business and if you're determined and if you're gonna, keep it going and really invest into it, your time, your kind of blood, sweat, and tears kind of thing, you should recognize that it's gonna pay off, right? If you keep going and keep trying, it's gonna change. So when you're feeling really low and you're feeling kind of crappy, there's something on the other side, right? I would say probably like everyone else, 2020 was pretty low, right? We're working from home, not by choice, but by force. We're kind of alone, right? I definitely fell into a depression. My clients knew it because I was just not motivated to kind of figure it out. I was just like, what is happening in the world, right? So it was, and it's not like a sad depression. It was kind of like a blank, kind
Mm-hmm.
of what's the point kind of like what's going on. And so, I mean, I combated that with hiring somebody that was going to help me with the bookkeeping and kind of keep things going even when I couldn't keep going,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how I felt. Like I was like, "Oh, I'll just stay in bed today." And thank God for Nina, because that's what, I had to get out of bed. I had to walk her, I had to feed her and all the things. When someone or something depends on you, I know it's silly because she's a dog, but it's true, right? So I had to get up every day. But there were definitely times where I would have stayed in bed all day, no question. So I think it was like a low point generally speaking, but that I would say like work life balance is a myth. It's more work life integration.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens to you in your life will affect your business and vice versa. It just has to.
Yeah, it does. And yeah, you mentioned in 2020 that yeah, the whole world was in such a strange place for everybody. How do we know how to deal with that, right? So yes, yeah,
I mean, I feel you're a CPA, but they kept changing the tax laws and PPP, and people were kind of in a frenzy. I mean, there were people working more hours than they ever had before just trying to keep up.
right.
And then you had businesses that, some of my businesses that I was working with, they shut down because one, either they mandated to, they had no choice, or they just didn't have the demand during that period. Like
Right.
there's some industries that did really well.
Mhm.
Anything that you could buy online essentially because you were stuck at home did really well. And
Mhm.
then some things, if it was a physical in-person thing, they just couldn't.
Yeah, that was really a difficult time for everybody. And if there is one book you'd recommend that we read, which one would that be?
Okay, so Built to Sell was recommended to me by a friend. Actually, he's a client, Max Bidna. He is famous on TikTok now. He's a really good marketing firm owner. Built to Sell, I would highly recommend. And then there's one where I like books where they like kind of yell at you. Um, am I allowed to curse? Because there's a curse word in the title.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll blank it out. How to Make Ish Happen, and
Mhm.
it says more money, get in better shape, create epic relationships. It's by Sean Whalen or Whalen. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's a
Mm.
really short book, but basically he's like, listen, only you can make changes, only you can save yourself, only you can do it. And
Mhm.
so you have to make a conscious decision of, am I kind of just going to keep running around this hamster wheel, or am I
Mhm.
going to stop the crap
Mhm.
and, really make decisions and conscious efforts to make some changes. And so it's kind of like a wake up call.
Yeah, and sometimes when you said about books that yell at you, it's like sometimes you need something to help you get up, right?
Motivation. Yeah. So I listen to it on Audible instead of reading it. And it's like, he's literally like, all right, get it together, lady. Like, what is your problem?
Well, thanks so much for sharing that with us. So we'll move on to the begin section. And I know you mentioned that you got into your business by way of through your aunt, basically, in that she had that class going, and you already, I guess, had an interest in that. So when you actually went to the class, what was it that made you say, okay, I'm going to actually continue doing this?
So kind of like you had said, like my techie love of tech, way I looked at it like, oh, this is a program I understand. And it was
Mm-hmm.
QuickBooks Desktop, right? So it was the very beginning. And it was like, oh, this makes sense, right? So I started to look at it. Like she had a client that had an issue, and I was like, oh, well, what if you did this as a workaround? And she's like, oh, I didn't think, because I looked at it more of like a software thing, right? So I was like, oh, I'm drawn to this. It's a software. I can manipulate and use it and like really kind of get into it. And then she sent me to a client that was looking for a new bookkeeper, and the old bookkeeper that was there was somebody that she had worked with. And that woman taught me so much. Her name is Maria. She is an angel. And so she taught me the entire like month end or month, I guess, month long process, right? Like, what do we do on which weeks? What are we looking at? What's important, etc. What reports do we need? Why do we do this? What happens when we click this, and where does it go? And so that kind of mirrored, like, it married the two together. So I had the software, and then now I understood the actual accounting process a little bit
Mm-hmm.
better. I think what drew me to it was the, and weirdly, I guess the administrative side of it I understood, the process of it I now understood, and the software I understood. And then I discovered QuickBooks Online, which was, web based, so I could do it from anywhere. I didn't have to go into a client's office and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And that was like game changer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can totally do this. I love this. I'm helping people, I'm helping them understand their business, because oftentimes, business owners start because they want to do a thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
somebody used the example yesterday of a florist did not start a flower shop because they wanted to do accounting. They started a flower shop because they love flowers, right?
Right.
So helping them understand, what they can and can't purchase, or when they should make purchases, or what maybe it's time to change vendors, stuff like that, really kind of get into their numbers. That's when I started to see like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool, because I'm kind of like the assist, right? It's always like kind of like being part of a team. I'm helping. And then the other side of it too is being able to help them create better processes is a big thing for me. So a lot of times when I started with a client, it would be that they had kind of an antiquated process. Well, we open the mail, and then we do the checks, and then we do this, and then we do that. And I'm like, well, what if we did this and we scan this instead? And now what if we move this to online, so you don't have to write paper checks anymore? Or what if we have this process of approval, or whatever the case is, so we don't have to worry about someone, just using the checkbook whenever they feel like it, stuff like that, helping prevent fraud and helping prevent theft, and just kind of like those little things. Yeah, I was like, I totally want to do this. I want to help people.
Well, I'm really happy you continued, and down the road I met you and you're helping me do the same for myself. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. What were the steps that you took to actually start the business? When you decided, okay, this is going to be my business, what did you do next?
So and I think you know this from knowing me a little bit, but I'm very like, okay, let's make a decision. I like, oh, we're gonna do it. And my friend Kristen, who I have leading ladies with, laughs at me all the time, because she'll kind of like him and haw, she's not really sure, etc. And then I'm just like, oh yeah, I just, signed us up. We have an LLC and a bank account. And she's like, okay. And so I picked a business name because, as you know, my last name is kind of difficult, right? So you see a lot of like, oh, Johnson and Johnson accounting, right? Like everyone's just using their names. And I was like, I'm not going to make people try to figure out how to Google my name, because they're going to definitely do it wrong. And so I went online and I was like, oh, kitschy, like bookkeeping names. Let's look. And totally booked, which is now trademarked, by the way. I have a trademark for it. And then I was like, okay, I need, and this is like the not important stuff necessarily. At least a lot of people don't think it's important, but I was very much into branding, and I was like, okay, I want to look at getting a logo. I want a website. I want an actual like domain and email address and all of those things, because I didn't want to be, Kelly G at Gmail forever. And I wanted to give that kind of like professional presentation. And so I kind of took care of all those things that people think of last
Mm-hmm.
first. And then I leaned into, okay, let's, get some clients and, kind of do those things. So I, the accountant in me says, set up a separate bank account. That is important. A lot of people save that for years later, and it's a world of headache that you can avoid. And so I did those things. I set up a separate inbox. I set up a bank account. I set up a mailbox, location so that I didn't have to give out my home address. I got an EIN number. People are running businesses using their social security numbers, which I don't understand at all, right? It's free. You can get an EIN number. It's essentially a mask for your social so that you don't have to give that out when you're working, with someone as a contractor. And so I did all of those things. And then I leaned into learning more about the business. Just as I took clients, and clients would know that I was new, and I always disclose that. So as I took on clients, I learned more about different kinds of businesses that I wanted to work with and who maybe I didn't want to work with. And then, I leaned into later on more marketing and growing and stuff like that. But I don't want to skip ahead if you have other
Oh
questions
no,
that
no,
ask
you
those
mentioned
things.
about the mailbox, and I actually I had done a short clip on that. So tell me more about actually having an address that is not your home address.
Okay. So I used a service in the city, which I then eventually used as a co-working space, but originally it was more of a, like, I forget what they call them, but basically having an office or a location that people can send mail to, that you can register to, that you can use as your business address, kind of like a mail forwarding kind of thing, because it was weird for me seeing my business on Google Maps when I was like home, right? So like if I pulled up maps and it's like, oh, totally booked is here, but that's also my home. I didn't feel comfortable with people thinking that they could just show up.
Hmm.
And so I did not. I didn't want that. And so I deliberately got like a rent a mailbox kind of thing. I mean, you can get them pretty much anywhere. I know, like, I'm in Queens now. There's one on Bell Boulevard that I can use. Or again, if you have a co-working space or an office in a co-working space kind of thing, using that as the address also makes sense.
Right,
Just basically not having people show up at your door.
right. And for me, when I first did it, I used UPS. So they have those
Yeah, they have the little mailboxes.
right. So, and it's different from using a mailbox because some things you do, they don't accept mailboxes. But when you have that kind of address, like through UPS, it's almost like you have a suite, except that suite is like a small little mailbox.
But you can have packages sent there, you can use it to register things. Yes, it's a little different. So PO Box has less flexibility.
Right. So I would encourage anybody starting out to please go ahead and do that.
Yes. And the EIN, I beg you, stop using your social, because
Yes.
how many people can sign up for things with your social, and you may not even know. It's just, don't use your social.
Right. So anytime where a social would have been required, you go ahead and you put in the EIN. This is the identification for your business. And that is totally fine.
And that doesn't mean that you have to sign up for an LLC or a corporation or anything. You can just have an EIN as a sole prop and a contractor, and it
Hmm.
could just be tied to your social. But then it's like I said, it's like a mask.
Right. And how did you go about getting your very first clients?
Okay, so since my aunt taught me QuickBooks, I was very fortunate that she then referred me to my first client,
Nice.
which is where I met Maria, and that's kind of like I said, I kind of went into that already.
So when
But
you talked about that earlier, that was your very first client.
that
Okay.
was my very first client.
Okay, nice. And that helps us to move on to the building segment. After that first client, how did you go about getting even more clients? I mean, I know your aunt probably referred more people to you. What are the other ways?
Yeah, so she did obviously send me more referrals. But what I found with only sticking to the referrals was that I was limiting how many people I could reach essentially and how many people I could work with. And the location was also a factor, right? So I was still going on site. So I was in the city 2 days a week. I was in Long Island 2 to 3 days a week. And so it was a lot of running around, right? I'm getting up in the morning, walking my dog, and running out the
When you
door.
say the city, we're referring to New York City.
Oh, yes, New York City. Sorry, I don't think we said where we were. Yes, New York City. So Manhattan for me was the city because I live in Queens. And so I was running around a lot. And then I went to a conference in 2017, I believe it was. And I got to see a bunch of other accountants talking about how they grew their businesses, how they marketed their businesses, the different technology they were using, the role that technology was playing in growing, in the accounting space and stuff like that. And I made the decision. I made two decisions. One, to go completely remote. So I decided that I wanted to work strictly online, and any of my clients that were not online, I was happy to convert them or refer them to someone else. I was lucky that everybody stayed and we made it work and it was fine. And then the other decision I made was that I was going to start to invest into some marketing. And so I did some research, and so that's how totally SEO came to be. Max Bidna, the man that I mentioned before, had a digital marketing agency that he ran also in New York City. And then he had asked for my help on some accounting stuff. So I said, hey, can I trade you some time and tell me, there's some things that I can do to just kind of get my business out there where it's going to reach more people, etc. And he suggested, really spending some time and investing in SEO. And so I contacted an agency to have them help me write some blogs, very simple, but we had posted a blog or two a week. And in addition to me going online and moving everyone online, I was able to take more clients on. And then in the first 6 months, I think it went up like 40%. My leads came in, and I was able to then work with people that weren't just referred to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was people that had found me on their own and, had started to just reach out from Google, which was
And
great.
can you tell us a little bit more about SEO, what that stands for, and maybe just a...
Oh, sure. So it's search engine optimization is SEO. And I mentioned writing blogs because really it's optimizing your website and the content on your website to be able to reach people that are searching for you, right? So I think of it in terms of, and oftentimes accountants, we kind of limit ourselves to accountant speak, right? Debits, credits, journal entries, QuickBooks, stuff like that. But the small business owner is not going to be looking for those things.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, we're using target words or keywords that will then be what those small business owners are looking for. So QuickBooks is a pretty major buzzword, right? But bookkeeping, accounting,
Mm-hmm.
New York City accountant, totally booked, which was my name, stuff like that. We started to kind of form blogs that were going to get me small business owners that needed accounting help.
Okay.
And obviously, not everyone that comes your way is going to be a fit. And I'm always happy to refer people out.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it, because we kind of tuned in those keywords that we were using and really kind of drilled into that, we were getting good leads, thankfully. And so with that, I would say SEO, and it's one of the least expensive ways
Mm-hmm.
to get your marketing started, because the blogs don't have to, I always say it's not rocket science, right? We're not writing about accounting process. I'm not giving you how-tos necessarily, but I want it to be where, like I said, I come up in those searches, right? And so it's going to be simple stuff. Simple stuff that is helpful to small business owners. And so that was probably the fastest and least expensive way to grow.
So when we talk about the SEOs, is it the blog itself? Is it the hashtags? Is it a combination of all of that? How does all of that work?
So it's the content itself, right? So in this case, the blogs were primarily what we focused on. And then also other areas of the website. So having stuff like the headers on your page is important. My bio would have some, kind of buzzwords in it. Sounds weird, but even the pictures that you post to your website, the titles of those pictures come up in searches for people.
Oh, the
So when you
titles,
look
because
at,
sometimes I don't change the titles because I'm like, nobody sees it.
I know, right? So like everything that comes from your phone is named as
Ah,
such. Like I
okay.
have a Pixel phone, so everything's Pixel, and the date. But I found that the more I optimized, right? So search engine optimization, the more that I optimized for what people were looking for and looking holistically. And I'm referencing the website specifically because that's where I started. The social media and stuff came later for the most part. So the hashtags and stuff like that would be a little later on. But the website itself, I wanted to make sure that, and I invested some money in having someone set it up for me because I was like, oh, I'm just going to use a template on Squarespace and it's going to be great. I'm good with tech. I'm not necessarily great with design always. And so I needed someone to streamline and pick a font and make it pretty, right?
Mhm.
I had a client come to me that was a graphic designer. So I asked her to create a logo. She created that. Just very basic of what I was looking for. She picked the font and she gave me some choices on the color. And then I wanted something that, kind of embodied who I am a little bit. Like that green in my logo is on the wall in my living room. It's my favorite color, right? So I
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that that stood out. Like a little bit of personality. I think also when people meet me, they're not like, I get it a lot that I'm not like a typical accountant, right? I have colorful hair and I can be a little loud or boisterous, and I speak like a New Yorker sometimes. And so I think those things are all things that I wanted to make sure were clear when people met me or even if they found me online. And so I optimized my online presence to bring out those things. But SEO, like I said, you can find somebody on Upwork or Fiverr that's, able to write you a blog a week and give them the keywords that you're trying to reach. And that alone, combined with something simple like Google Analytics, you can keep track of how it's doing and, grow your presence. I will say consistency is absolutely key, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is once a week that I'm updating my blog, once a week that I'm updating my website, because something like Google, which is really the king of search engines,
Mm-hmm.
they're looking to make sure that you're still an active business, that your website is still, up and running, that you're still engaging with people. And so you have to keep it going, essentially. Thankfully, I'm still doing it. And so I still get leads from it, and I have a lead sheet that asks where people found me. And oftentimes it's Google.
Nice, nice. And I
Yeah.
couldn't help but notice your logo on your shirt as well.
Yes. Totally book loves QuickBooks is what it
Oh, nice. I
says.
love it. And what would you say is one of the biggest moves you've made since starting your business?
The transition from working in people's offices to working remotely was probably the most major, which I think would be major for anybody, but
Mm-hmm.
it also and this as an accountant, it came with a software switch as well, right? So
Right.
moving from essentially desktop to online, it allowed me to just be more efficient, and I didn't have to commute now, right? I was commuting an hour into the city, then I was commuting between clients, sometimes 3 or 4 clients in a day. I was giving myself quite literally panic attacks because,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, I'm going to be late. Oh, if I get stuck at this client, oh, I'm not going to get this done. What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And oh, this client is closing. I'm not going to be able to just sit in their office and figure this out, right? Like I have a time limit.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say going from running around like a chicken without a head, I would say, to actually just being able to sit at my desk, start my day, or sit at my laptop, right? So like I said, I moved to California. All I needed was my laptop.
Right.
It was easy because I didn't have any clients expecting me to show up on Monday morning. It was
Mm-hmm.
just that was it. So I would say that was pretty major.
Yeah, that's huge because you could see how it would benefit you and your clients. But then you could also lose clients because you're making that change. So that is
Absolutely.
huge.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that you hired a bookkeeper. So if you can go a little bit into what a team looks like for you.
So I always say like I'm a team of one and a half. So I have a part-time bookkeeper who also works remote that does primarily the bookkeeping, right? A lot of the data entry and the day-to-day. And so my roles kind of, I guess, moved from being that person that my clients were more reliant on to get those things in, right? Like I said, in 2020, I was really struggling. And so I said, okay, I need somebody that's going to be on top of things that can do this when I'm not able to, and is going to be just kind of like almost like a machine, like a little bit like a machine, right? Like this is my role. And so I tried a couple of different ways. So pre 2020, I had hired two friends of mine who didn't know much about bookkeeping. And I was like, it's cool, I'll teach you. And it was interesting, to say the least. Because then also, they say don't work with your friends. There's a reason. But it was also a lot on me to teach them. And so instead of just being able to hire somebody that already knew what they were doing and kind of getting that done, it was more like, okay, let's walk you through everything. And so I wasn't saving much time in doing that because I was still very involved in the actual work itself. So they had both gone and gotten jobs, and they're both very happy where they are now, and we're still friends. But when I then decided again, all right, I'm going to hire somebody, I decided to outsource. And so I started looking at companies and asking for recommendations for people overseas. And in 20, I think it was 2019, 2020. No, it must have been, yeah, 2020. That's when I really started to kind of like lean into it. And then I've been lucky. I mean, I did a lot of research and I got recommendations, but I've been very lucky that it's worked out very well. And so, like I said, it's a part-time bookkeeper, but and someone described it to me this way. I go to sleep, and when I wake up, it's done, you know? If they have questions for me, if it's more high level, I'm still, very much involved, or if it comes to process and how we do it. But primarily the data entry side, the less complicated side of things is done for me, which allows me then to do the parts that I like, and the fun stuff that I like to do. And it's kind of a game changer because I can take on more clients. I'm not, having to stretch myself as thin, but then also I have someone that's, CPA level accountant, someone that's has a degree in accounting, somebody that has experience in accounting. I'm not necessarily teaching them how to make a journal entry. If anything, I might be advising them on tech or the apps that we use or where to find reports on this, POS system and stuff like that. But the most basic stuff is done, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's really great. And I know you talked about struggles. So we talked about 2020 and what that looked like for us. Would you like to tell us of any other struggles you've encountered as a business owner?
I mean, I think you run into things just in dealing with people on a regular basis. Like I had a client once who essentially threw a hissy fit about wanting to use like a different payroll system or something. And she said, "Well, I'm the boss." And he's respectfully, in your business, you absolutely are. But in my business, you are not. And so this is how we do things. This is what we use. This is the reason that we use it. And so I'm happy to help you understand it better. I'm happy to sit with you and kind of make it more comfortable for you. But when it comes to the process, we're not changing it, you know? So I think stuff like that, the struggles of dealing with people, sometimes emotions, or especially around money,
Mm-hmm.
people get emotional, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think most of the struggles are probably people related. But thankfully, I think my clients, I mean, my friends, but my clients generally are very comfortable speaking to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've tried to make it and so that they can express when they're not happy with something, or if they're struggling with something, or if they're going through something. But I would say most of the struggles are probably related to just high emotions for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, right? I
Yeah.
mean, aside from my 2020, like, yeah, I would say it's probably mostly people related.
Yeah, and I mean, as accountants, we do deal a lot with people, so I could see how that can come up and show up in different ways.
And sometimes at their best and worst, scenarios. And
Right.
so it's difficult.
Right, and I know sometimes too, like you talked about processes, and when people are used to doing things one way, and you could see how a new way benefits them, but it's kind of, change is difficult. So being able
Yeah,
to manage all of that helps, yes.
absolutely.
Okay, so now we're going to transition over to the blossom stage. So, I would love to know, what does success mean to you?
So when I first started, I thought success would be my first success, right? Was like, oh, if I can replace my income, I'll
Mm-hmm.
be good, right? So that was first. And then I realized that the way that I was getting to that income wasn't necessarily how I wanted to spend my time, or it wasn't making me very happy. And so success for me now is that flexibility that I mentioned, that work life integration, being able to, shut down my computer at a certain time if I want to, being able to take a vacation if I want to, having my dog sit on my desk and not have it offend anybody, that kind of stuff, that's success for me. I mean, obviously, the money part of it, yes, I want to pay the bills and I want to be successful like
Mm-hmm.
financially, but I think for me, the biggest like symbol or the biggest sign of it, I guess validation, is the flexibility that I've been able to create.
Great. And what keeps you motivated?
That exactly that. So when I mean, don't get me wrong, I have days where I'm like, "Oh, I should just get a job. It would be so much easier if I just go get a job," right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I think about having to answer to somebody, having to
Mm-hmm.
have a regular schedule, the things that I would be giving up by, committing to, let's say, a 9 to 5 or a commute into the city, or not being able to kind of run the show.
Mm-hmm.
That's what keeps me motivated. That's what keeps me going. Cause I'm like, oh, I kind of like this life that I've created. I
Mm-hmm.
want to keep doing that. I'm going to figure it out. And
Okay.
so, yeah, just keep going.
From knowing you, I know you don't go into an office. I mean, some people they have their businesses and they have an office anyway. You
This isn't a giveaway.
Yeah.
I was like, I had just plain white walls, and I was like, oh,
So your office is in your home.
Yeah, no, I don't have to commute into a
No,
place.
but then while I was saying that, I realized actually she does have an office. It's just
My commute is upstairs to
the
downstairs.
best commute ever. I'm telling you, I love it. So I'm just wondering, like, how do you keep connected, like, with others? Because for me, sometimes I feel like I am in a silo. That's why I love my weekly meetings with you because I am connecting with you. I'm learning new things, and I'm speaking to somebody else about accounting. So I love that. So what other things do you do?
I set, it's funny, right? A friend of mine lives downstairs and she runs home from work and she's like, "Oh, I just can't wait to sit on the couch," right? And I'm like, "Well," I said, "that's the reason that I make plans with my friends and we plan things ahead of time because I want to make sure that I have a reason to leave the house. I have a reason to be social. I have a commitment to make it to whatever the case is." And so I kind of make sure that my social life is a priority. And so I'm making sure, like I said, that I'm getting out. But when it comes to community, like accounting community wise, going to conferences was a huge, huge, huge factor. I've met so many amazing people that do, and we all, I don't look at any of them as competition. We all do our own thing. Some of us do it differently. Some of us do it very similarly. It doesn't matter, right? But I have friends now, and I mean real friends in other countries, in other states. I have my Slack is full of people, that I work with, thankfully, and then also people that I'm, friendly with. My group chats also keep me going. Just making sure that I prioritize keeping in touch with people is major. And then also having people in my life that make sure that if I disappear for a week or two, they notice, right? Like, "Hey,
Right.
Cal, you haven't gone out in a while. Maybe we should go to dinner. Maybe we should grab a drink." Just kind of making sure that I'm still keeping those things at the forefront. And then also, I used to be part of like an online community for bookkeepers and accountants. That was also pretty major. I met some great people there. And so finding a group that kind of speaks your language or, kind of runs at your pace is also a really good idea. Even just a weekly check in with something like that, where you have maybe 10 other people on the call to talk to is important. "Hey, I have a question, work related question," or, "Oh, this is what's going on in my life," having just the right people around, I think is important.
Right, great. And you mentioned conferences. Would you recommend any particular conferences for other accountants out there?
Scaling New Heights was the first conference that I ever went to, and they're in Florida again this year. I'm telling you, it was like mind blowing, right? So like I went, and it was more like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe there's other people that do what I do. I can't believe there's so many people that do what I
Mm-hmm,
do. I
mm-hmm.
can't believe they do it so differently." So scaling was a major one for me, and I think for a beginner conference that was ideal. QuickBooks Connect is pretty big now. And when I first started going, it was a little smaller, but it was great for meeting, like I said, other people using QuickBooks. But then also, there's a lot of more advanced, more technical stuff that they teach now. So
Mm-hmm.
different programs and just kind of like how to advance your business and your career. I guess my conferences are all accounting related, so I'm not sure if anyone listening is going to be really super interested in them. But I'm also going to BKX this year. That's also in Orlando, and that's specifically for bookkeepers. Universal Accounting holds it's in May, and I'm traveling, so I couldn't go. But they also hold a bookkeeper conference in Jacksonville. So mostly the ones that I go to are very industry specific, but I was looking for more people in the industry that I could work with, bounce ideas off of, that kind of understood, because I'm not going to burden my friends and family with my business woes or my my accounting questions, right? So, and I have friends that cross into both areas that are personal and work, friends, but
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to continue to meet people in the space and learn from them and grow my business that way and grow, I guess, my network that way. And I'm grateful that I have.
For sure, and I love conferences, and I look forward to meeting up with you at one of them. That would be great. And so we've been having a lot of fun. I know I have. I
Yes.
don't know about you. Yeah, so we've come to the end. So we're going to transition now to the closeout section. And I like to ask if there are about three practical tips or steps you'd recommend to someone listening to you now would also like to start their own business.
I don't know if they're practical, but I'm gonna say it in the way that I do it, right? And so this is like I mentioned with Kristen, do it. Like I know that that sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, but taking the first step, like I said, starting a bank account, choosing a name, getting your EIN number, right? I know they sound really simple and really small, but pushing yourself into that kind of like uncomfortable space, pushing yourself to make a decision, pushing yourself to actually like do the thing, not just speculate or talk about it. I think that's pretty major. Don't let the small stuff or the frustrating stuff be the reason that you walk away from it. If it's something that you are excited about, if it's something that you want to, it's going to help other people, if it's something that is going to help you get out of a rut, if it's something that you have this great idea that's going to be a game changer for whatever industry it is, get in front of people and be persistent. I think maybe that also is something that people kind of forget, right? So you might not get the meeting the first time, but keep trying. Who knows who? Who do I know on LinkedIn that knows this person? How can I reach out to this person so that I can get in front of this company? Whatever that looks like, be persistent. And then I would say the last one is be consistent. So keep doing the reps. And again, I'm quoting Kristen on that one. Her word for the year was reps. She's like, I have to keep doing the reps. I just have to keep going and being consistent and starting every day with an agenda and making sure that I'm going to keep on essentially keep on keeping on, right? So be consistent. Like I said, with my marketing, I had to be consistent. It had to be weekly. I had to make updates. I had to get on social media consistently and speak to people consistently. I go to the same, 2 or 3 conferences every year to make sure that I'm staying in touch with the same people. And I want to say something about that too. So a lot of times people don't go to the conference, they don't go to the event, they don't think they can afford it, whatever that is. I found ways to make that work, right? So I would sacrifice something else to be able to go to the thing. And if you feel like you're in a position where you can't leave work for more than 2 days, then you probably should reevaluate what work looks like for you, right? Maybe it's time to hire somebody. Maybe it's time to raise your rates. Maybe it's time to make some hard decisions. The only thing, being a business owner is not for everyone. I totally recognize that. I totally get that. But if it could be for you, if it is for you, then pursue it and really pursue it like hardcore. Like go
Mhm.
after it. And if you're not sure how to do something, Google is a fantastic resource. Podcasts are another way to learn a lot of things about how people have grown their businesses and done well. There's a lot of free resources. SBA, you have the Chamber of Commerce. There's, networking groups in your neighborhood. If you go on Eventbrite and put in networking, there are going to be a bunch of things that show up that are going to, just be professionals getting together for a drink, for a snack, for whatever the event might be, right? I just joined 2 local ones because I have clients, but I don't have anyone local to me because why would I? I do most of my business online, right? So I was like, oh, I would like to now start working in the community and see if there's anyone here that I can help and that I can work with. So make sure that you're utilizing the resources that are there for you. And I mean, if it takes an investment, obviously think about it, make the decision, don't take it lightly, but sometimes that investment is going to be what's the game changer. That first conference that I went to was a very last minute decision, but I doubled my income in the second half of that year because of what I learned. I made the decision to use more technology. I made the decision to go remote. All of this was from one conference. I was very much like, all right, we're making changes. That's it. But it's something that I had to do.
Right. I get that because being in that environment and feeling that energy and seeing that things are possible, yes, that helps a lot. And I'll put you on the spot here a little bit. Is there another entrepreneur that you would recommend that I reach out to for the podcast?
Well, now because I've mentioned him twice, I'm gonna say Max. So, he calls himself Marketing Max. He's like TikTok famous now, but I tell him every time like all the time that he helped my business grow so much.
Mm-hmm.
Just for making what he thought were like little recommendations, but he's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a marketing genius. And we met because we were at the same co-working space, and that 1099s are due on January 31st, right? So he
Mm-hmm.
comes into the office on like January 31st at 5 p.m. and he's like, so what are these like 1099 things? And I was like, oh my God.
At 5 p.m.,
Oh my God.
January 31st.
I was like, here you go. This is what we're gonna do. You're gonna get
Mm-hmm.
an extension. You're gonna do it this way, and then we're gonna work together to figure it out.
Nice.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we kind of bartered back and forth while he was getting started. But
Mm-hmm.
marketing genius, I would definitely recommend him.
All right. Well, I'll work with you on that. I would love to meet
Okay.
Max. So thank you so much. And one of the things we try to do with the podcast is to create community. And one of the ways we do that is connecting persons like yourself, guests, with persons listening out there. And we would like to ask if you would be willing to give about 30 minutes of your time to the
Yeah.
you choose how many people, but at least the first person who reaches out to you and says that,
Yeah. I'm
we got
happy
to.
to.
Okay.
Well, anytime I speak, and you know this, I'm like, oh, connect with me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook, like all the
And I
things,
think
right?
that's what
So
I heard when you actually invited people to reach out.
I absolutely meant it. If you ever see me, say something.
Right.
So yeah, definitely. You
That
can.
actually brought me back. That is what you said that really encouraged me to reach out. And I'm so glad that I did.
Oh, good.
So
I'm
if you're
glad.
listening out there, she's serious. If you want to reach out to Kelly, please go ahead and do so. And she'll be happy to speak with you. So can you tell us ways that we can reach you?
I'm assuming you're going to list it, but I'm on LinkedIn, obviously under my name. So Kelly Gonsalves. My business has a Facebook, an Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the things. So if you look for Totally Booked with that logo, that's me. And my website, totallybooked.nyc instead of .com. So you'll be able to book an appointment there. You can find out more information about me, about the business, about what we do. It's all there. So yeah, different ways, whichever makes you happy.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us, for sharing so much valuable information.
Good. I'm glad I could help, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So we hope to have you on again. So we'll be in
Yeah.
touch. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to this episode of Begin, Build, Blossom, Your Business Journey, a CME Accounting LLC podcast. Please subscribe and be on the lookout for our next episode. If you'd like to share any feedback with us, please email us at podcast@cmeaccountingllc.com.